planting season are very exaggerated. They said that farms have enough seeds, equipment, and fuel, and even extra amounts in some areas. The statisticians are most alarmed with the decrease in the quantity of planting area in some regions of the country. The question still remains, what will we eat next winter? We received information today. For the first time, at least 1/4 of all production of Russian farms should be sold to the government. However, the farmers do not see themselves as obligated by this rule if the state does not fulfill its duties to the farmers. This is according to the agreement on mutual cooperation between the government and the Association of Peasant Farmers. At the Congress of Collective Farmers today, the decision changed several times. First, the delegates decided to go home and await a government response to the issues. If there is no agreement, then they would take strong collective actions. But by the end of the day, a more peaceful point of view prevailed. They delegated powers of negotiation with the government to a round table which will prepare a similar agreement to that the government has with farmers. This is how the Russia Land Group met their delegates, but the Congress began by developing a decree and confirming a new charter for the collective farm movement. There was a double situation here. Collective farms, which exist de facto, were not given de jure recognition in the new forms of property in the document which determines the conduct of agrarian reform. Therefore, the main point of the agenda here was a demand to recognize the legal status of collective farms on an equal level with other farms. Among the other issues of the decree, which was adopted unanimously, was a demand that the government repeal the 25% value-added tax on agricultural products. The delegates heard from and were supported by Agriculture Minister Chlistun. They also demanded that the government repeal the high interest rates on short-term bank credits, which are very difficult in these conditions. We believe that the country people are trapped by these high prices like a wolf in a bear's den, and we have very little money left over to buy equipment, fertilizer, and seeds. These Kyrgyz herders have fallen into another administrative trap. Most of the powers have not given sufficient resources for them to fill their state orders. And the prohibition on exporting of goods, especially food products, out of the Republic have deprived them of the opportunity to solve these problems themselves through barter. The result is that the planters are without fuel and seeds. We can understand why the difficulties with the dictates of other republics, but how can we explain the outrageous prices of domestically produced energy in the Republic? We used to be proud that the cost of 1 kilowatt-hour at this hydroelectric station was the lowest in the country, but now the electric meter has brought down even some of the larger enterprises. So the optimism of the Statistical Committee turns out to be somewhat surprising. President Oskar Akayev believes that the situation in agriculture in Kyrgyzstan is close to catastrophic. He emphasized that we cannot expect help from the other Commonwealth members. Much will depend on the heads of state meeting tomorrow in Minsk. And now about rumors. We could devote an entire broadcast to this. Today we began receiving alarming telephone calls. The people who called said that they have learned that there was an accident at one of the atomic facilities at Oblinsk. The press center of the Russian Ministry of Atomic Energy tells us that no accident has occurred at any facility of the Russian Ministry of Atomic Energy. They are all working in normal order. Our correspondent from Grozny reports that for the first time in several months, last night the residents of this town were not awakened by automatic weapons fire. This is apparently the effect of the curfew, which was in its second day now. The commandant of the city is now the first deputy interior minister, Said Ahmet Mudiev. He issued an order governing the curfew regulations. There are checkpoints set up on the main highways around the city. They are empowered to stop auto traffic and people who are late coming home and subject them to search. This is in the nighttime. During the day, traffic and services and all stores and enterprises are working normally. This curfew will be in effect in the Chechen Republic for 30 days. It is very difficult to bring peace and accord to the lands of South Ossetia. Last night, fire came from the Georgian village of Nikosi from automatic weapons and snipers. They fired on the residential areas of suburban Skhinvali. There was also fire from the neighboring Gori region. In order to put down these hotspots, the National Guard and self-defense forces returned fire. From Karabakh, we have, fortunately, no tragic news. A group of observers from the Council on Security and Cooperation in Europe arrived in Moscow today. They will head further to Azerbaijan and Armenia. As we know, having become members of the Helsinki process, Azerbaijan and Armenia have taken on certain obligations, including human rights obligations. Mr. Schwarzenberg, the head of the delegation, said that one of the goals of this observer's visit is to evaluate the situation on site and to express their conclusions to the Council on Security and Cooperation. There are also proposals that this council to perform the role of a mediator between the two sides. One of our most serious problems is nationalism, especially nationalism combined with the large quantities of weapons which are already in hand. And the theft of weaponry continues. In Karelia, we have the most recent and the biggest theft. It's not hard to become a prophet in your own land. Last fall, we told you on the TSN news program that the technology and equipment of this former military base near Petrozavodsk had been left without guard by the anti-aircraft forces. Here in the city of Kimi, a similar situation to that one in Petrozavodsk has occurred in the city of Kimi. At one of the long-term storage facilities of our forces, we have noticed the absence of a considerable amount of weaponry, including 10 machine guns, several dozen handguns, and over 10 military grenades. Was there some sort of attack or a break-in? No, there was no attack, and from the outside, it appears that all of the locks and seals are intact, but further investigation will be conducted by the military prosecutor. Where has the arsenal gone? There are certain facts. On December 16th of last year, all of the weaponry was in its proper place. This was confirmed by an inspection. It appears that the theft was carefully planned. The alarms did not sound. The armed guards were powerless to prevent the theft. Therefore, it appears it was carried out by people who knew the military procedures very well. This is the Bykova airport near Moscow, where a contraband shipment has been detained by police. This airplane, belonging to the small enterprise Krilo, contained 4.5 tons of cobalt, which is considered a strategic resource. It belonged to the Moscow association Aridan and was being sent to the Anta company in Vilnius. The cargo has been detained and an investigation is underway. It has been learned that 8 tons of cobalt were intended to be sent, valued at over 4 million rubles. So thanks to the active work of our police, we have solved one economic crime, but this is a fairly rare success. The situation over the last year was evaluated at the Russian Interior Ministry today. Statistics show that criminals can now overcome all efforts to stabilize situation taken by the law enforcement agencies. There were over 2 million crimes last year. Only 708,000 of them were solved. Most of them are theft, burglary, and muggings. The militia, which is criticized by some as lazy, has to fight a motivated and well-armed bandit force. But In comparison with last year, or with the previous year, in 1991, 14% more crimes were solved. But the interethnic conflicts and the economic destabilization guarantee that tranquility will not come soon. How can we fight crime effectively if the CIS has no coordinated organization? We are now taking specific steps in order to conclude agreements with both the Commonwealth nations and also with the Baltic states and with others. In Minsk, we are working with a group of experts which will work along the lines of our ministry and work at all these issues in the most detailed way. U.S. Secretary of State James Baker, who is on a trip throughout the Commonwealth nations, arrived in